Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. We're going to be getting into all sorts of different issues. First of all, I want to just share with you, if you will, some good news in a number of different areas. And the reason we do this on Point of View is you're not probably going to hear this too many other places. The first thing I'm going to be sharing comes from John Stossel. So if you have seen him on, say, a Fox News or something like that, maybe you will have heard this. Or if you've read your commentary or read an article that I'm going to be citing from Reason, maybe you're familiar with that. But in most cases, the average person out there in America doesn't even know all this good news. So that's the first thing we'll talk about there. We'll get into the whole issue of religious liberty, and that's good news. And then we want to counter that with some of the negative things that have been said over the last couple of weeks, especially in some of these presidential debates. But let me just get into that and mention that, again, we're in the midst of our Truth Team Week, and we'll talk more about how you can participate in that in just a minute. But I thought it'd be good just to start off with some of this good news, and also mention that in just a few minutes we're going to have in studio with us Floyd McLendon. He is running for Congress in the 32nd Congressional District, and I think has a very good chance of winning the primary and maybe even winning the general election. A former Navy SEAL, so I want to talk a little bit about that. Yesterday you might have listened to the program, and we talked about its very effective ministry to help individuals that have been in the military but are dealing with some kind of stress or PTSD. And so I wanted to get his thoughts about that. Also, I thought it was interesting that on the third hour today, we have Wes Modder. And for those of you that have been listeners for some time, you have to go back about 4 years. Wes Modder has been a chaplain in the Navy. Before that, he was a chaplain for the Navy SEALs. And Floyd McLendon, of course, has been with the Navy SEALs. But he got almost pushed out of the military because in a private counseling session just shared his biblical perspective on marriage, being one man and one woman, and that was enough to almost get drummed out of the Navy, of course, because of our good friends at First Liberty and because of the visibility we gave you here on Point of View so that you could pray, write letters, and others. He was reinstated and, of course, then was actually left the military with an honorable discharge and is now actually a pastor in Chicago. In between those two individuals I might mention, we also have our good friend Jim Denison in studio, and that's at about 1:15. So we've just got a great lineup of topics and people and issues. But let's get to some of this good news. And John Stossel brought it up in large part because you're hearing, for example, from some of the Democrats, but he also gives us some quotes from various news organizations. We're destroying the planet, the middle class is disappearing, and all those kinds of issues. And so what he wanted to do is give us some good news. And a lot of this comes from what he says is one of his favorite magazines, Reason, in which they point out that there's less war, more food, we live healthier and longer lives, HIV will soon be history, we're increasingly free to be whoever we are, love whom we want, every work has become more pleasant. And so he talks about, in some respects, this is why you don't hear much good news, because he then goes on to say, let's just face it, my profession, because he's in the news media, wins clicks and ratings by hyping whatever makes us afraid. And so whether it's global warming or whether it is the destroying of the planet, or in just a minute I'm going to get into this whole issue of the middle class actually disappearing, these are all the negatives and as a result. And interestingly enough, that the article that is in Reason, the editor-in-chief, Catherine Maggie Ward, actually says we live in a world really of reliable miracles. She says, when I'm having a bad day, She says, I go out on the internet for videos of happy cyborgs, hearing impaired people getting cochlear implants turned on for the first time, paraplegics walking with the help of adaptive prosthetics, infants getting their first pair of Coke bottle glasses, things that in another era would have caused the founding of an entire religion. I just love that way he says that. But he does take on this issue. What about the middle class? Because we hear that going all the way back to candidate and then President Bill Clinton. We've been hearing about the middle class has been shrinking. And the reason, she points out, is the middle class is shrinking because people are getting richer. Now, for those of you that watch this program, either when you go to pointofview.net and click on the watch, or if you're watching right now on Facebook, I'm going to hold up a chart, and of course, we'll put this maybe in a future commentary I will do. But if you look at first part on this side, you can see that over time, from 1967 to now, the middle class has been shrinking. That is true. But the reason the middle class is shrinking is because poverty is decreasing and people in the upper class are growing. So the so-called bad news is actually good news. Fewer people under poverty and more people in the upper class. And you wouldn't, of course, know that if all you were hearing from MSNBC and CNN is the middle class is shrinking. And then she also takes on one of the other issues about work. You know, I know all of us sometimes get tired of our jobs. Sometimes it gets a little boring and things like that. But she points out that a couple hundred years ago, work was dangerous. It was very easy to die at work. Work was extremely boring, even for people who had good jobs. Jobs are pretty interesting now. They mostly don't kill you, and we should be grateful for that. So I just thought I'd share that from something that John Stossel put together, and it's just a good example of good news. And it's the kind of thing that we talk about here on Point of View that you just don't hear elsewhere. So as we come to a break, let me just encourage you once again, if you have not joined with us, we have an opportunity for you to participate. And we ask you to do so that we can bring this kind of good news to you. We can really begin to motivate you to make a difference in your community. In just a minute, we're going to be introducing you to a congressional candidate that you probably are hearing about for the very first time on this program. You're going to a little bit later hear from Jim Denison, who will educate you about what is happening in the church. A new book that's come out, The Myth of the Dying Church, which is published by an individual that works with Focus on the Family. He's done some reviews and we'll also be talking about a couple of articles he's written in the Daily Article. Certainly that fits into that. And then Wes Modder, a great example in that third hour of an individual that we have talked about in the past. And in some respects, because you heard about what he was doing, you were able to pray for him. Some of you were able to support what he was doing. Some of you actually even wrote letters. Some of you in the military expressed your opinion. And as a result, he was reinstated and received an honorable discharge because his only sin, if you will, and I put this with air quotes, his only error is that in a private counseling session, and somebody asked him, how am I supposed to think about this issue of marriage? He expressed the biblical view of marriage, and as a result, then was summarily removed from his position. And interestingly enough, I don't think most people know this, maybe he can share that later, the person that replaced him there for a while in the chaplain's office was a homosexual who was married that actually he didn't know was a homosexual at the time, but was kind of undercover. So anyway, that just gives you an idea of what you're supporting when you support Point of View. As we've said before, that if you join with us at certain levels, you receive our booklets. Yesterday, we talked about constitutional interpretation. Just a few minutes ago, somebody handed me the newest book on a biblical view on criminal justice. So those are the kind of resources we want to put in your hands. And so if you would like to join with us, and I hope you would, certainly go to our website right now, pointofview.net, click on the banner that says Truth Team. You can see all the benefits that come at joining at various levels. And if you'd like to give us a call, we'll take your phone calls. 1-800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
No doubt you've heard the phrase, campaign promises are like pie crust. They are made to be broken. The first time something like that was uttered was back in the 17th century. That shows you how skeptical people have been when a candidate makes a promise. The Democratic presidential candidates are making some extreme promises. Jim Garrity put together a short list from candidates he refers to as charlatans. Bernie Sanders promises no one will ever have to pay for public colleges or universities ever again. Elizabeth Warren promises that no American parents will pay more than 7% of their income on child care. Kamala Harris promises the average teacher will receive a $13,000 per year raise. Peter Buttigieg will cut the number of incarcerated Americans by half without an increase in crime. Andrew Yang promises that every adult citizen will receive $1,000 per month from the government forever. And don't forget Joe Biden, who promises the government will cure cancer once he is elected. Certainly, these candidates must know they can't deliver on these promises. There's the obvious question of cost. At a time when the federal government is $22 trillion in debt, where do they think they're going to get the money to pay for all these outrageous promises? But a more important question is, where do these candidates get the confidence that the government could even deliver on some of these promises? All you need to do is look at the last few presidential administrations that have had scandals and ineffective responses to everything from terrorist attacks to the Great Recession. We have so-called shovel-ready projects that turned out not to be so shovel-ready. We have veterans waiting for care because of the incompetence of the VA. The Affordable Care Act certainly hasn't made health care more affordable. These candidates are making promises they can't keep, and I suspect the voters know that. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Anti-Semitism, go to viewpoints.info/antisemitism. Viewpoints.info/antisemitism.
Point of view, Truth Team. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind.
Power, love, and a sound mind, and that's again from 2 Timothy 1:7. It is our theme verse through Truth Team, and we're going to talk a little bit more later about how you can join with us. But we always like to, during the time in which we're coming to you asking for financial resources, to also bring some guests to you. And one of those individuals is the birthday boy. This is your birthday today, I just found out from your wife. And you didn't expect that one, did you?
I did not, Kerby. I did not.
Well, you know who to blame. Floyd McLendon, who is running for Congress. And if you are saying that name sounds familiar, this is now the second time you've been on the radio. And if nothing else, that I think illustrates why we like to do this program, because I think a fair number of people in the Dallas area this hour and last time you were on are meeting you for the very first time. And even though you are going to be knocking on lots of doors and meeting lots of people, this is still just an incredible megaphone to get your message out, isn't it?
Absolutely, Kerby. Thank you for having me this morning. I really appreciate it. And the biggest agenda is for the Republican Party to get out and vote.
Yeah.
Right. We were really lackadaisical last year. There was a low turnout, and we have to take back Texas and make it red again.
You know, I was sitting in a meeting the other day, and they were saying, well, we got all these people coming from other states, and that's why it's turning blue. First of all, it's not turning blue. That is certainly not the case. But they also found that actually a majority of the people coming here are Republicans, but they're coming here maybe from other states, don't really understand what's going on here, number one, and they're also not registered to vote. So the first issue is make sure that you have individuals, maybe even in your neighborhood, that have moved in. Find out where they are, register them to vote, because you have, of course, a primary that you will deal with, and that's in March. And then, of course, the general election is next November. And some people might say, well, this is awful early. You've been involved in politics just a little bit, and I've been in politics most of my life. This is not early because you have to really do a fairly significant amount of time just educating the voters, because they don't necessarily even know that there's an alternative. If you went right now in the 32nd Congressional District and you ask them who their member of Congress is, I doubt you could get 10%, maybe 20% that could say what his name is. And that tells me that you just got a lot of work to do. Plus the fact if he wants to get reelected, he's got a lot of work to do too, right?
Well, absolutely. And you made the point of people coming to Texas to live here. I've been talking to a lot of people on the ground, and we have a lot of Californians who come here because they don't like what's going on in California, right? So they're actually coming to Texas because, Texas has a reputation of being conservative, of having conservative values, and just being really good people. I mean, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And then also too, when it comes to registering to vote, that's why I am on the ground talking to everyone, because as a Navy SEAL, I'm used to embedding myself in countries for 6 months at a time, where we have to build relationships, with the indigenous people, and then we also help them strengthen up their country. So this is very important.
Well, you mentioned where I wanted to go next for just a few minutes, and that is you were a Navy SEAL. And, of course, we have your whole bio here, and we have a link to your website in which you had an injury and had to do it again. So anybody that wonders about the perseverance and tenacity of Floyd McLendon just needs to read his story. It's a really powerful story, number one. But number two, just the other day, we had a very helpful discussion with an individual that has been reaching out to those in the military who have PTSD or other traumas to really help them out. And you have certainly been in the military 25 years, as I remember, working in the Navy. And as a result, you recognize that some of these individuals are coming back broken, and there's a real point of ministry that we can have in those lives, isn't there?
Yes, sir, there is. And I don't like to use the word broken, because it to me, it says that they're less of who they are. Mm-hmm. But they do come back, and there is issues that they have to deal with based off of what they've seen overseas that most people in their life shouldn't have to see. And we just have to be there and understand that they're not broken. They're just different now. And we're going to have to, accept them and figure out like how we can support them, like now that they're back home.
So again, one of the things we talked about yesterday is just how you can know that there's an organization like that. And there are many, by the way. That's just one that we focused on yesterday. And that's the kind of thing that we like to communicate here at Point of View. And people sometimes say, when I give to Point of View, what am I giving to? Well, obviously, you're giving to the 3-hour radio program. Obviously, you're getting for the booklets and resources, the videos, the interviews, and all the rest, but also the connection to those kinds of ministries. And one other point, since you're a Navy SEAL, I thought we'd talk about 3rd hour today. We're going to have Wes Modder. Now, he was actually, at that time, a Navy chaplain, but before that, he actually had been a chaplain. He, first of all, was a Marine, then he goes into the Navy. This guy just, he wanted to do everything he could in all the service, but for a while he actually was a chaplain for the Navy SEALs, for you guys. And so you would think that this guy would be so well respected and got commendation after commendation. But one day in a private counseling session, somebody asked his opinion about same-sex marriage. And as a chaplain, he shared from the Bible what he felt the Bible had to say, one man and one woman. And that was enough for him to get censured. They were trying to drive him out of the military. Then, of course, he connected up with First Liberty. That's Kelly Shackelford. It's Michael Berry. It was Jeremy Dice, who was on program with us yesterday. And they were able to reverse all of that. Now he's a chaplain, but most of the time he spends his life as a pastor in Chicago. But there's a good example. For a while in the military, as you well know, there was this sort of political correctness that you couldn't even express your opinion about what the Bible had to say about some of these issues.
Well, yes, there is. And there has, you have to think about it. Like there's a line. The United States Armed Forces is an organization that is supporting our country and defending our country.
Right.
And we have to make sure that each and every member is prepared to do that. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to infringe on those individuals' sensibilities.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, side by side together downrange, none of that really matters.
That's right.
My opinion
Black,
doesn't
white,
matter.
red,
It doesn't matter at all.
Gay, straight, yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm with you.
Yeah.
But again, in a private counseling, and it illustrates again just one of those issues that we had certain regulations being imposed upon the military. For a while there, the military was almost like a social experiment that some of the various members of Congress and even presidents wanted to do. And I just think what we need to do is free you up in the military to make a difference. And that gets back to one of your points of credibility. You will obviously, if you're elected, be in the House of Representatives. And of course, the House of Representatives is not ratifying treaties like the Senate. But still, you are going to be deciding how budgets are going to be spent. And it would seem to me that somebody who has been in the military could understand a lot more about the Defense Department than an individual that's never served in armed forces. And we have very few people now in Congress that have served in the military. So I think that's just another outstanding asset that you would bring to the job.
Absolutely, sir. Right now, we have about 22% military veterans in Congress. And if you look back to the 70s, it was about 70%. So we're missing that worldly view to come in and say, look, America is the greatest country on earth. And although we do have our problems, like we are way, way better than anyone else who's trying to come in and change our way of life, or we don't need to look outside, to solve our problems. Like our Americans are smart and intelligent, and we are capable of solving our own problems. So, yeah. And just having a military perspective, more than 22%, I bring that to the table along with other military veterans that are running for office. And we just want to help and do our job. And also, I personally feel like that it'd be a disservice if I did not step up and run to be a leader for our country, just based off of the 25 years of service and those who've invested in me for me to be here sitting and talking to you today.
Well, again, we just thank you for your service. 25 years, as I've said before, we'll never be able to thank all of you that have served your country admirably. And so if you find yourself saying, I want to know a little bit more about this guy, McLendonforcongress.com. You say, okay, I don't know how to spell that. No problem. It's real simple because we have the link there. Just go to pointofview.net. And when we come back, we'll try to explain to some of our listeners this crazy 32nd congressional district. Is it in Highland Park? Yes. Is it in Garland? Yes. Is it in Wiley? Yes. Is it in Saxe? Yes. Is it in Richardson? Yes. Okay, we'll try to explain it a little bit more in just a minute, and we'll get into a couple of the issues. But as we go to a break, this is a perfect time for you to say, hey, I appreciate you letting me know about a person running for Congress. I appreciate you standing up for people in the military. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to educate us about the issues. That's what we do. And so, again, as we are going to the break, this is an opportunity for you to give us a call. That number is 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. We have some people waiting to take your phone call. But if you would like to go to the website and find Floyd McLendon's website, just go to pointofview.net, and there's also a banner that says Join the Team. So we encourage you to join the team. Please take the time to join with us. We need your financial support, and we'll continue our conversation right after this.
This week, we're celebrating the power of one. The power each one of us has to help change our world. The power to carry the love of Christ and His truth to a hurting world. The power to restore hearts and minds across the nation. Throughout the week, you'll hear from ordinary people just like you. You'll hear them tell about what they've done, how they've gotten involved, how they've helped to restore truth in our culture. You have the power to change lives. You have the power to carry truth to every corner of our nation. And with the help of a special ministry friend, that power is going to be doubled. Join the Truth Team today and boldly stand for truth in a world of lies, distortion, and information manipulation. If you join today with a monthly gift, each gift you give will be matched dollar for dollar for an entire year. Give online by going to pointofview.net and click on the Truth Team banner, or call us at 1-800-347-5151. We're standing by to take your call now, so call 1-800-347-5151 or go online to pointofview.net and join the team.
Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, Floyd McLendon in studio with us for just a little bit longer. And if nothing else, we wanted to encourage you, if you are interested in what he is going to be talking about even this hour, you can go to our website, pointofview.net, and find that link. In case you don't know how to spell his name, it's pretty easy to spell, but just in case, we've made it very easy. We got his picture, and we have a link there as well. And I was just thinking, we're encouraging people to support this ministry, and sometimes they say, why should I support Point of View? And it's a great way to introduce to the public people like yourself. And I was just thinking, where was your first radio interview? It's right here, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
So there you go. So this gives you an opportunity. And I was just thinking about that. You may know another member of Congress, Louis Gohmert. And Louis Gohmert had never been a host on a show and sat in this chair. And then did so well that then Sean Hannity started having him guest host. So he still credits me for getting him started. So maybe I can get a little bit of credit for getting your campaign started, if nothing else. But
absolutely,
let's, if we can, talk about one issue, and that's the issue of race. I don't bring it up that often, but unfortunately the Democrats do. And Penna Dexter's commentary today, which will air actually on Friday, and we actually send it to people on their inbox on Saturday, is where she's quoting from Star Parker, who's been on the program before, and Star Parker is African-American, points out that the black unemployment rate is the lowest it's ever been. But then she goes on to say, also at an all-time low is the gap between black unemployment and white unemployment. That has shrunk as well. And so the point she's making is that certain policies are better for the community. As a member of Congress, if you're elected, you're representing all the people. But for just a minute, since you're African-American, since your opponent, if you are win the primary, will be African-American, there's going to be a question that says, how can we help the black community? And there are two different views. One, the government gets real involved. The other is government gets out of the way and allows for entrepreneurship and private property. What's your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts is, one, that we have to educate the American people that most of us live by conservative values. That's number one. Mm-hmm. And we all, a traditional family home. We grew up in the church. We love to bring home a nice paycheck with less taxes. We want to be able to start our own businesses and benefit from that. Like, all of these things are conservative values.
I'd say so.
And they are a part of the Republican parties. That's just us. That's who we are. So it's educating the American people, like, you're already a Republican. Mm-hmm. You just don't know it yet.
Yes.
So I mean, that's really the most important thing for us is to do that, and we have to do it, together. We got to get off our butts and we got to go out and knock on the doors and let them know that you are a Republican by heart, and that's how you need to vote, because this is why our country is doing so well.
Yes. Well, and I thought it was interesting because this is one of the governors back in New Mexico many years ago, but she is Hispanic in this particular case, and she had a number of Republican legislators sit down with her and her husband, even though she was Democrat, and began to ask her questions about what she thought about life, what she thought about marriage, what she thought about entrepreneurship, what she thought about private property, what she thought about government regulations and everything. And each time they said, well, that's the stand of the Republican Party. And finally, I'm going to clean it up because she used a swear word. She said to her husband, oh, my gosh, we're Republicans, and that, I think, is the kind of education you're going to have to be doing, because there are people in your district, and we'll explain the extent of that district in just a minute, that are going to be saying, well, if I really want to reach out to people, and if I'm concerned about minorities, Hispanic Americans, African Americans, well, that's got to be big government. But that's not necessarily what we're finding taking place right now by getting rid of regulations, giving tax cuts, and freeing up the economy to provide more and more jobs.
Absolutely, too. And I think another big piece of it is we as Republicans have not done a job in showing the American people that the Republican Party is not just old white men, right? We have blacks, Hispanics, Asians, young, old. It doesn't matter. The Republican Party is diverse, and we have done a really bad job at not showing that. And I think once we start doing that and we push our own narrative as opposed to the Socialist Democrats, feeding the American people, this, the rhetoric that they're feeding them. I think our American people are very intelligent, like we talked about, and they're going to see, straight through, and then they're going to come home.
And I've noticed that a lot of people are just changing their minds. One of the other things in Penna Dexter's commentary, which I mentioned before, is Robert Johnson, who is the founder of Black Entertainment Television, BET. He's, I think, was the first black billionaire, if I remember right. But the other day, Robert Johnson said, I think the economy is doing absolutely great, and it's particularly reaching into populations that heretofore have had very bad problems in terms of jobs, unemployment, and the opportunities that come with full employment. So African-American unemployment is at its lowest level. Now, this is a man that actually endorsed Hillary Clinton. I don't have the naivete to think he'll endorse Donald Trump this time, but you can get the sense that he's really thinking about whether or not he's been back on the wrong horse, to use the illustration here. And there may be some people, like you said, that may just come back home and say, if I really want to address the issue of black unemployment, Hispanic unemployment, the need for job creation, there is a model that seems to be working out there right now, and that's very different than Medicare for all, Green New Deal, guaranteed wage, and reparations, and all sorts of other things, which would just bankrupt the country and destroy jobs. So there's going to be a real choice, even in your campaign, I suspect.
Isn't that wonderful, really?
Yeah.
So if you look at the Green New Deal, I think they said it was $93 trillion. It would cost each American $600,000 a year in taxes. We have a leader in a seat who is actually doing what he said he was going to do when he ran for office, and it's actually happening. The economy is great. We have low unemployment, low taxes, right? A free enterprise. They are actually putting initiatives for to help with medical costs and pharmaceutical costs. So what else do you want from what else do you want from that leader? What else do you want from your American leaders? And the thing is, what you want is more leaders like that.
Yeah, I want a few more people with common sense in the House of Representatives.
Absolutely.
That's what I want right now.
Absolutely. And that's the Republican Party.
Yeah.
We are, and it's based off of the conservative principles, Kerby. That's it. Like we're not loyalists to the party. We're loyalists to our conservative principles, right? And it's rooted in love. And we all know, being on the radio show, God is love.
Yeah. Well, just before I let you go, let's, if we can, talk about the 32nd Congressional District. Again, you will be running in a primary which takes place in March. You have a number of other opponents. I think you are the odds-on favorite, but we'll figure out that as time goes on. But if somebody says, hey, I'd like to know more about your campaign, am I even in your district? It's not totally gerrymandered as some, but it is kind of odd because there are people in Highland Park that can vote for you. There are people in Garland, including my own daughter, who can vote for you. There are people in Wiley, Saxe, Richardson. So it's kind of strange, but give us a little bit of a sense of what that 32nd district looks like.
We have 2 counties and we have 11 cities. So
it's crazy.
Yes. So it's Northeast Dallas County and it's Southeast Collin County.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have North Dallas, University Park, Highland Park, Richardson, Garland, Murphy, Wiley, Saxe, Rowlett, Sunnyvale, Mesquite. And it is, you black, white, Hispanic, Asian. I mean, it is across the board. It shows America.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it really is very diverse, and that's a good thing. The other issue is I would suggest that some of our listeners right now say, well, I'm not in the 32nd district, so I'll just ignore it. I'm going, no, you may be in a district. For example, I'm in the 3rd Congressional District. I have no doubt that my member of Congress is going to be reelected, so I can help him do some block walking, but why can't I help you? And there are people all over the Metroplex and around even the state of Texas that could still participate with you in some way or another. So what do they find when they land at your website?
Well, what they're going to find is the conservative principles that I'm running on, right? That's a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2, what they're going to find is that this is the problem. You just mentioned it. Well, I'm not in 32, so I can't help. You absolutely can help. And I think this is one of the reasons the why we're so behind right now is because we did draw that line. But no, we need to reach across the districts. We need to reach across the state precincts, and we need to help each other, right? And that just needs to be our number one theme. And, just do away with that. Yes, you can help in 32. I'll help in 30. I'll help in other districts, but we need to do it together.
I would say so. So again, if you want to volunteer, if they want to ask you a question or schedule you to come and speak at a luncheon or at their house, that's available too, right?
Absolutely. www.mclendonforcongress.com, or you can email me at floyd@floydmclendon.com. And I'll be more than happy to come and have a conversation. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm a leader. I want to know what's on your mind, so that way we can build a relationship, so we can build a plan that's best for the district and for the American people. And I go to D.C. and fight for that.
Well, Floyd, happy birthday. And we'll see you again soon.
Thank you,
We'll be right
Kerby.
back.
Point of View, Truth Team. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind.
Hey, greetings, everyone. This is Lieutenant Colonel retired Alan West, former member of the 112th Congress. I just want to take a few moments to tell you why it's so important that you support Kerby and what he's doing here with Point of View Ministries and all the great people they have here on this team. This is truly an intersection of the culture. It is truly a place where you can have that open discussion about the politics, your faith, and all the things that are affecting our country with the current issues. But it is always from a biblical perspective. And I think that's what makes Point of View Ministries, Point of View Radio, and what Kerby brings in his analysis and his assessment so very important. So please continue to support Point of View Ministries, Point of View Radio. What a great ministry. What a great man. What a great team that you have here at Point of View Ministries and Point of View Radio. Make sure that you support them.
Colonel Alan West, and every time he comes in here, he always gets out his credit card and donates to the ministry. And, of course, he sat in this chair a couple of times as well. And I thought for just a few minutes, since I was going to let you go, but we never really got into the whole issue of racism. And whether it's Alan West or whether it's Floyd McLendon or others, let's just face that racism has existed in America. You've been the recipient of some pretty awful comments. So how do you respond to some of that?
Well, I respond to so there's three things. One, some people just don't know, right? I've worked with individuals who said you're the first black person I've ever worked with, right? Some people do know, but they just don't care, right? And then what you have is the climate today is so sensitive that it's difficult to have a respectful conversation.
That's true.
You know, the fact that we're having this conversation is great because you're a white man, I'm a black man, and we're talking about race. And with being a black man, I can only speak for my experiences. Every week I experience, on some shape, form, or fashion, racism. And I have only two options. One, I can feed into that same narrative, right, which gets us nowhere because most of the time aggression meets aggression and there's no solution. Or what I can do is that I have an opportunity to, one, educate the individual who is pushing racism at me, and then I am representing those before me who had to deal with way more than what I had to deal with for me to be in this position, and also have a responsibility to those behind me to set them up for success as well. And that's just something that we have to do as a people. It doesn't matter what color, but it's just understanding racism is real. It's not going anywhere. So how do we navigate positively, and look to God, to get us through? Because it has nothing to do with color. It's about your heart. It's about your character and integrity. And I think that I've done a good job of actually doing that more and more as I get older and more educated.
One of the things I've noticed about you now and getting to know you a little bit better is you're a very gracious individual. And the scriptures say that a gentle answer turns away wrath. And it does seem to me that sometimes being gracious, civil in the midst of a conversation that isn't civil sometimes forces them to be civil. So if you raise the stakes, then both start raising the stakes, and then you start shouting at each other. And at a time when there is so much turmoil, one of the things we've tried to do here at Point of View, and Nick Pitts and I were talking about that yesterday, is to have a conversation and not a shouting at one another. And there are nights, I'm sure, when you even turn on the evening talk shows and you just go, I can't even believe how people are treating each other, whether the race issues involved, just the lack of respect. And it seems to me that we need to bring dignity and respect, graciousness and civility back into the political discussion, don't you think?
Oh, I honestly agree. Now, Kerby, it's hard. It's hard to see that someone is attacking you based off of the color of your skin or and not retaliates. I'm a Navy SEAL. Like if the bullets come back flying, then I'm taught to immediately react. But it is very gratifying when you have dealt with that situation in a respectful, civil manner, and a week later or even just an hour later you sit down, my heart is it's warm because I just planted a seed for an individual. And let me give you an example. There was a team guy I worked with, and he was using the N-word a lot as slang. It was slang. And I said, hey man, be careful about who you use that word around because they're not going to understand. I understand you using the slang, but I just want to educate you. And he went off on a tangent, like, well, I could say whatever I want. And I said, okay. I said, all right. And I left it alone. But you got around the platoon, it got around the team and about the conversation. And I didn't do anything. I say about 4 years later, this guy called me up and he said, hey, I want to apologize. I'm sorry. I understand where you were coming from. at the time, I just didn't understand.
Yeah.
So when you do the right thing most of the time, you're not going to get the results like that moment. It's going to take some time for people to adjust and understand, that, a good heart, a good mind, right? Just a good Christian person, like where they come from, it's going to take time for it to sink in. And then they're going to be like, now I understand where they were coming from. Yeah.
And again, there are a lot of people that are just saying, how is it that you're African American, you're in the Republican Party? Of course, you have the J.C. Watts and others that have preceded you, so it isn't like it used to be, but it's still kind of one of those issues. You're just going to get some people that, as you said, need to be educated. Just never really even thought about that. Maybe the first time they've met an African American, first time they met a black Republican. I mean, whatever that is, they're just they have a category mistake, right? And so you really just need to be willing to be gracious and educate. And I think that's true for all of us, no matter what our background is, whatever our ethnic background is, whatever our religious background is. If we can be gracious and civil, that's certainly what things we talk about here on Point of View. So
absolutely, I'm blessed to be in this situation. I'm from the inner city of Chicago, and I am sitting right here running for a Republican seat in Texas.
Yes.
Right. So just from point A to point B, like it's God's will. And everyone who has touched me throughout my life, has helped with that will to bring me here. You can't paint me in a box.
Yes.
Right. But I love that, because we need leaders that you can't paint in a box, so that we can understand different aspects and different modalities to get the job done.
Yes. Well, again, thank you for letting me keep you for a few more minutes, because you had some other things you wanted to say, and I certainly had the break, which I don't always have. So if you found yourself saying, I really need to meet this guy, Floyd McLendon, again, let me encourage you that you could go and meet him. You can send a letter to him, but some of you may just say, I could get together a group of people in my home and have him speak, or I'm at a Chamber of Commerce meeting and maybe he could be a speaker there, or maybe our church is encouraging people to get involved in the political process and just bring him there to pray for him or something like that. So there are just some ways in which people can connect up with you. So again, we have a link to your website. Makes it pretty simple. Floyd, looking forward to the next opportunity.
Thank you, Kerby.
Let me just say before we take a break here that if you found yourself saying, I've learned a lot here about a lot of different issues. I mean, we've talked about a number of things even in this first hour. And next hour with Jim Denison, boy, there's an individual that raises the IQ the moment he walks into the room. Or Wes Modder, who actually was a chaplain to the Navy SEALs. Those are individuals who will be with us in the next couple of hours. And so if you say, I really appreciate the kind of conversation you have here, the way in which you communicate that, and the way you expose us to different people, different ideas, I would encourage you right now to give us a call. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. That's the pledge line. And many of you maybe are listening to this program for the very first time, or just have been listening to it the last couple of months. You've never been a donor. So I'm challenging you to consider even a small donation, because, again, we have a match on the table, up to $12,000. Call us. We'll be right back.
When I turn on the news, there are days I wonder what's happened to our nation. So many things seem to be turned on their head. It makes you wonder, what can be done about it? Then I remember how Jesus talked about the power of truth and how it can set people free. We know the truth, and when it's spoken in love, it has the power to bring healing to our divided world. 2 Timothy reminds us that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Is it possible in our day and age to once again see civil debate, common sense, and national unity? It seems very clear from 2 Timothy that we are to be bold, not fearful, to appreciate God's power to do good, and to demonstrate to the world His truth and love. But to communicate this to a broken world, they need you to join our team. Join the Truth Team. Your monthly support has the power to turn our nation back to real truth. Join the Truth Team today at pointofview.net/team. or by calling 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net/team or 1-800-347-5151.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be spending our time talking about a variety of different issues. Just a minute, I want to quote from Dennis Prager, who was in studio with us the other day. We taped that interview, and we'll be playing that next week. And just in a few minutes, we'll have in studio with us today our good friend Jim Denison of the Denison Forum. And we'll be talking about the election in Israel. We'll be talking about whether or not there's a decline in the church. And in the next hour, Wes Modder, who was a chaplain in the Navy, who was going to be ushered out of the Navy simply for expressing in a private conversation his view about marriage between one man and one woman, but because of our good friends at First Liberty, was able to be reinstated. Now is actually a pastor in Chicago. So we have lots to talk about. But let me just start with Dennis Prager for just a minute, because he entitles this piece, "Do You Know What the Democrats Said at Their Debate?" And he uses a lot of examples, but I'll focus just on one, and that is Andrew Yang, who's one of those 10 that was up there at the debate, said, "America today, everything revolves around the almighty dollar, our schools, our hospital, our media, even our government." And he said, "I'd like to ask Mr. Yang, does everything in your life revolve around the almighty dollar? Is your friend's life?" And he said, if yes, well, he's just showing the shallowness of his life. If the answer is no, then he thinks of himself as morally superior to all other Americans. Then he also talks about Andrew Yang saying we have to get our country working for us again instead of the other way around. And again, I love Dennis Prager, who was in studio with us the other day, saying that's just the complete opposite of what one of the most famous politicians after World War II, one of the famous lines was, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." That was John F. Kennedy. And we've turned that on its head today. And he points out that what you have are people that have really taken these verities, these ideas, these very important principles that we've used for decades, even centuries, and turned them on their head. And so that is certainly one thing that Dennis Prager has in his piece. One of the others I thought I'd mention is Ben Shapiro, in which he, in this particular case, is quoting from Beto O'Rourke, Robert Francis O'Rourke. Of course, he talks about the AR-15s and things like that, but he also talked about the fact that O'Rourke actually completely changes our history, in which O'Rourke says that racism in America is endemic. The founding of our country is not July 1776, but August 1619, when the first African was kidnapped and brought here as a slave. And, of course, the New York Times, as we talked about the other day, actually has the 1619 Project. And these individuals, going all the way back to a book that I have on my shelf by Howard Zinn, Marxist author, really want to just tell us about how evil this country is and how this country is just completely riven with racism. And I think it illustrates, if nothing else, one of the reasons why we bring Point of View to you, to give you a side that you're not necessarily hearing from these political candidates, a side that you're not necessarily hearing from the mainstream media. And that's why we're in the midst of our Truth Team Week, to really come to you and talk about some of our financial needs. And all through this week, I'm privileged to have sitting across from me Brad Fisk. And Brad, this just illustrates another reason why I think people should support Point of View, because if nothing else, we're giving an antidote. Mm-hmm. We're giving another side to Howard Zinn, to Andrew Yang, to Beto O'Rourke, to Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and others who have such radical ideas that they're not only proposing radical ideas that are going to affect your family, but they're really just, in a sense, rewriting history and don't necessarily have the same kind of appreciation for this country that those of us around the table have.
Well, you're right about all of that. And we have a huge thing called a biblical viewpoint that we look at things with through that lens. And so many times we find distortion and lies and just out and out ridiculous things being said because they're not grounded and rooted in the Bible and the Word of God. That is a huge difference there.
That certainly is.
First, before we get started on telling everybody about what we're doing this week, I want to say thank you for the last 2 days of callers that have called in and so generously given. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And what we're doing here is called Truth Team. It's your opportunity to interact with us, to kind of, let's use election, vote for us, and say, I think you ought to be around longer than today. And so we want to fund you. And you do that by giving us a call at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, a gift of any amount right now. Good news. There's a match challenge on the table of $12,000.
There you go.
Thanks to a generous individual who came alongside and helped with that. And so now that means every dollar you give a gift of $50 a month, it becomes $100 a month. A single gift of $10 becomes $20. Every dollar will be doubled with the match. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net. You can give online too.
You know, one of the things about that biblical worldview, which you just mentioned a minute ago, is we recognize that there are some very significant positive stories in American history, and there are some very dark chapters. And we talk about that as well. We've talked about Indian wars. We've talked about slavery. But when that's the only focus that you have, you can begin to sense what is it going to be like, and what could be at stake is not just whether or not you have somebody in the Oval Office for 4 years or 8 years who implements policies that hurt you and your family, but they are also, in a sense, going to be rewriting the textbooks, if you think about this.
It's already
and
happening,
already
yes.
we have these young people that are convinced that the source of evil in the world is America. And the reason for that is because these evil Christians are intolerant. And so if you find yourself sometimes saying, I just want to hear the other side. I mean, do we have an answer to those questions? Yes, we do. We talk about how to apply a biblical worldview. We also talk about, in a sense, how to know how to defend a biblical worldview, because I think we're going to have to, Brad, more and more know how to defend a biblical worldview. And so people say, what's the difference? Well, it's a difference of whether or not you raise up a generation of young people who, as we've talked about before, believe socialism is better than capitalism, or whether you have a generation that says, you know, I'm proud of American history. I know we have, in some cases, had some very dark chapters, and these are unpaid debts that need to be fixed in the future, if I might kind of paraphrase Martin Luther King Jr., but we still have an optimism about the future, and we're very encouraged about some of the things that have actually happened over the last couple of years that sometimes don't get any kind of publicity because, after all, we just have to hate this current president. And so this is why we just come to you, because we recognize what's at stake. And you can speak to this even better than I can, because I was with a grandchild last night, the only one I have. You have a few more than I do.
A few more.
And you wonder what their world is going to be like if we don't actually turn this around and begin to talk about some of the things that have made America great.
You know, and that great points, and that's all truth. And we're talking biblical truth, and we're talking about an opportunity for you to invest. Think of it as an investment in eternal values and family values and biblical values. You vote right now by giving us a call and a gift, a generous gift at 800-347-5151. The phones are open. We can see them. And one is occupied, two are occupied, the rest are open. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. You can also give at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
If you want your gift to impact culture, that's why we need you to call right now. 800-347-5151, pointofview.net. Every dollar doubled. And next we have Jim Denison in studio. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
No doubt you've heard the phrase, campaign promises are like pie crust. They are made to be broken. The first time something like that was uttered was back in the 17th century. That shows you how skeptical people have been when a candidate makes a promise. The Democratic presidential candidates are making some extreme promises. Jim Garrity put together a short list from candidates he refers to as charlatans. Bernie Sanders promises no one will ever have to pay for public colleges or universities ever again. Elizabeth Warren promises that no American parents will pay more than 7% of their income on child care. Kamala Harris promises the average teacher will receive a $13,000 per year raise. Peter Buttigieg will cut the number of incarcerated Americans by half without an increase in crime. Andrew Yang promises that every adult citizen will receive $1,000 per month from the government forever. And don't forget Joe Biden, who promises the government will cure cancer once he is elected. Certainly, these candidates must know they can't deliver on these promises. There's the obvious question of cost. At a time when the federal government is $22 trillion in debt, where do they think they're going to get the money to pay for all these outrageous promises? But a more important question is, where do these candidates get the confidence that the government could even deliver on some of these promises? All you need to do is look at the last few presidential administrations that have had scandals and ineffective responses to everything from terrorist attacks to the Great Recession. We have so-called shovel-ready projects that turned out not to be so shovel-ready. We have veterans waiting for care because of the incompetence of the VA. The Affordable Care Act certainly hasn't made health care more affordable. These candidates are making promises they can't keep, and I suspect the voters know that. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Anti-Semitism, go to viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism. Viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism.
Point of View, Truth Team. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind.
Power, love, and a sound mind, 2 Timothy 1:7. And that is kind of our theme verse, and Brad Fisk with us. And before we get to our interview, which we're going to do with our good friend, Jim Denison, we do need to remind people that we have a match on the table, $12,000.
Yeah,
what does that mean exactly?
That's pretty important. What that means, a match challenge is where an individual has come alongside the ministry and said, I would love to make this gift of $12,000 to the ministry, but it is conditional. It has to be matched by your listeners dollar for dollar. So as our friends call and they give either monthly gifts or single gifts, every dollar will be doubled up to that $12,000 thanks to that individual. So it's kind of like in the old Kmart days, the blue light special.
Yes.
If you remember those little blue lights spinning around. And this is a great opportunity to step in and be a part of what we have going on here at Point of View. And so would you give us a call at 800-347-5151. That's a toll-free number, 800-347-5151. You can also give at pointofview.net.
And again, we have in studio with us our good friend, Dr. Jim Denison, holds a PhD as well as a Master of Divinity from Southwestern Baptist Seminary. Last time we even talked about genetics because of all the work that he has done as well in that field as an ethical consultant and an author of all sorts of books. And one that I've been promoting lately is Volume 3, Biblical Insights to Tough Questions. You can see all the other ones over here, Brad. 7 Critical Issues, How Does God See America? and a couple of others by him and his son. I mean, just an incredible gift that he has been to the body of Christ. And, of course, most importantly, while I'm doing show and tell, the daily article. So, Jim Denison, always great to have you in studio.
Kerby, so glad to be back with you today. Thanks, my friend.
Let's talk about something we have not talked about because we saved it for you. The Israeli election. That is the issue today that you address. And as we encourage people to go to our website or directly to your website, to the DenisonForum.org, they can read about that. But you will be going to Israel here in just a few days. You've been to Israel 30 times, something like that. Talk about the significance of that. Why should we as Christians here in the United States be concerned about an election in Israel?
Israeli elections are fascinating just on the level, just in terms of the merits of the issue itself. 29 different parties that were running in the Knesset. The Knesset is their parliament. It's 120 seats. 61 seats makes a majority. No party ever gets a majority. And so the party that leads in the election, that has the most seats, and in this case right now it's the blue and white, which is not Likud, which is Netanyahu's party, it's the opposite party, will be given the opportunity on Sunday by the president, which is a ceremonial position, to form a coalition. And the people he forms the coalition with, the parties he forms the coalition with, will get to 61, and then the leader of that party becomes the prime minister. It's very confusing. It's a parliamentary system that you see in some other countries around the world as well. The good news is that it brings a great kind of spectrum of engagement in the political process in Israel. But really what's at stake here is the future of Netanyahu's vision for the country. This would be his fifth time to be prime minister if he's reelected. He's already the longest-running prime minister in history. His coalitions have, in recent years especially, engaged what are known in Israel as more right-wing parties, a number of them that are especially advocating a Zionist sort of agenda in the country. So the West Bank comes into play, the relationship with the Palestinians, the relationship with the Arab Israelis comes into play. 1/4 of Israeli citizens in Israel are Arab. And there's a huge question as to whether they should be able to serve in the military, whether they're to be understood as citizens on the same level as Jewish Israelis. And so really how the country positions itself relative to the Palestinians and the Arabs and the larger Arab world is in some ways in play as a result of this election.
Yes. So again, this would be confusing enough in a stable Middle East, which is not what we have right now. You might have noticed that there was a drone attack in Saudi Arabia at the oil production facility, which really took out about half of their production. And so you have that. So you have an aggressive Iran, you have Yemen, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Israel, and all sorts of other things happening simultaneously. And as Joel Rosenberg said, it really is the epicenter. Who would have predicted that this little small nation of Israel, about the size of New Jersey, would be the focus of the world? So that's why we need to pay attention to the election, don't we?
It's really true. The scripture calls us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Jerusalem in Israel is this tiny land bridge. On the south, you have Egypt, which was always the great superpower of the ancient world. On the north, it could be the Assyrians, it could be the Babylonians, it could be the Persians, but no one wants to fight a war on their own turf. And so the Egyptians will go out to fight the Assyrians, and the Assyrians the Egyptians, and they meet in Israel, typically at Megiddo. That's why Megiddo has been torn down and rebuilt 27 times over the years. The road that's there, what they call the Via Moris, is the exact road that the Egyptians marched up and down, and the Assyrians and the Babylonians. And it's this land bridge, Israel is, which makes it enormously important from a geopolitical perspective. But, of course, there's the biblical perspective, which is what makes it so interesting to us.
You know, and Brad, that's one of the things I was just thinking about, that sometimes people don't really realize why we have so much history in the Bible, but because it was that land bridge. But more importantly, if you turn on CNN tonight or MSNBC tonight, which I don't recommend, but if you do, or even ABC, NBC, CBS, you're not going to hear this biblical perspective, because that's what we provide here on Point of View.
Exactly. I was exactly thinking that you're just not going to hear anybody say what he just said, because they're coming from a different viewpoint. And we have always, for over 40 years of faithful broadcasting, we have stuck to the biblical version of what's going on in this world. And it's not hard to do as long as you stay true to God's word and nowhere else as your final authority.
Well, if one of the things that I would maybe have you talk about for just a minute, Jim, is that lately you've been willing to come on every week. Now, I know enough, Brad, about Jim. He's not looking for one more thing to do.
Right.
But he comes on, one, because he's my friend, but more importantly, because you see how significant this radio program can be to let other people know that you produce a daily article. So talk about the significance of Point of View and why some of our listeners maybe need to support Point of View.
Kerby, thank you for that privilege. I was hoping to have that opportunity for so many years. I've been grateful for you as a friend. I've been grateful for your incredible intellect, for your heart for the Lord, for the way and the passion by which the Holy Spirit Spirit has used you to be a spokesman into the issues of the day. You've really been on those forefront issues. You've really been this prophet to the culture, speaking the truth in love. You've done it in a biblical way, but also in a gracious way. You've done it in a nonpartisan way, in a non-agenda-driven way. You've just done it to really manifest the Spirit of Christ. And over the years that I've seen your ministry, I've been so grateful for you and for who you are and what you do. But I'll tell you, these days are unusual days. We're at a place now in our culture. I don't think America has ever been as antagonistic to biblical truth as it is right now. I don't think our culture has ever been as opposed to biblical morality as it is right now. I'm frightened to report that Duke University has barred Young Life from its campus. Not because Young Life won't allow LGBTQ individuals to come to their events, they will, but because they insist on biblical morality for their leaders. And for that reason, Duke, which was founded by Methodists and Quakers, which was called Trinity College until some years ago, has not allowed Young Life to be on its campus. We're at a place now where point of view is more critical than it's ever been. Reaching people, discipling people, helping people understand the culture and engage the culture is critical on a new level. And that's why anything we can do as a ministry to partner with you, to stand with you, and to stand together in these days is an investment in the kingdom.
Well, again, Brad, that's one of the reasons why we encourage people to join with us. We have a $12,000 match, and we need to clear that up this hour, don't we? Or at least the next hour.
We sure do. And I'm wondering if there might be 6 of you during the break coming up here that could step in at that monthly gift of $50 or more. That's only $600 for the whole year. And we've got a Yeti, yes, the Yeti brand tumbler. And we're excited that we want to put something of high quality in your hands. This is an incredible gift. It's a 20-ounce tumbler, hot and cold liquids, and it's got our name on it. And it's just a thank you gift to welcome you aboard and being part of the Point of View family. Again, that's $50 a month or more, but you give it any amount because every single dollar, whether single gift, a monthly gift of any kind, will be doubled up to the $12,000. And remember, we don't get to put that money in our total until it's matched. So we're looking for 6 of you on the phones right now at 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. And you can also get all the same incentives and more information about them actually at pointofview.net. pointofview.net.
Let me encourage you to go to the website. First of all, that has a link to DenisonForum.org, and we also have posted today's article, so you can see that, and we'll come back. You did talk about Duke University. I want to talk about that. Kind of best of times, worst of times, because in that article, you also mentioned the 2 Christian calligraphers who actually had the courts rule in favor of them. Well, last month, we had 2 Christian videographers that had the courts rule for them. So in some respects, we have good news and we have bad news. And so it's really something I want to talk about a little bit more with Jim Denison. And if you would like to know more about him, you can go to the website. But also we have a banner that says join the team, Power, Love, and Sound Mind. That's where you can find out more about the various gifts we provide to you at whatever level that you join. And so we're looking for 100% participation. If you can give $100, that becomes $200. $20 a month becomes $40 a month. $50 a month becomes $100 a month.
Yes.
So let's take a break. And this is when we need you to call. We have people waiting for those calls right now. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Every dollar doubled. We'll be right back.
This week, we're celebrating the power of one. The power each one of us has to help change our world. The power to carry the love of Christ and His truth to a hurting world. The power to restore hearts and minds across the nation. Throughout the week, you'll hear from ordinary people just like you. You'll hear them tell about what they've done, how they've gotten involved, how they've helped to restore truth in our culture. You have the power to change lives. You have the power to carry truth to every corner of our nation. And with the help of a special ministry friend, that power is going to be doubled. Join the Truth Team today and boldly stand for truth in a world of lies, distortion, and information manipulation. If you join today with a monthly gift, each gift you give will be matched dollar for dollar for an entire year. Give online by going to pointofview.net and click on the Truth Team banner, or call us at 1-800-347-5151. We're standing by to take your call now, so call 1-800-347-5151 or go online to pointofview.net and join the team.
Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, if you would like to join with us, and I hope you would, that number to remember is 800-347-5151. That's the pledge line number, and it's different than the on-air number, although we did give that out the other day for some of you who'd like to give a testimony. But when I got Jim Denison here, I got the best testimony I can
absolutely,
do. Right?
Yeah.
Fix, don't you think? This is great. I mean, I just sit there and take notes when he starts speaking anyway. But if we do need to hear from you. I can look into the room there and see some people people on the phones, but I see other people looking at the phones. I don't want them looking at the phones. I want them holding them up to their ear, right?
Exactly right. 800-347-5151. Remember that $50 a month or more gift, and we are going to gift you with the Yeti tumbler. That's the 20-ounce. Hot and cold. It keeps stuff. We looked it up this morning. Over 6 hours, it'll keep something hot or cold. So that's pretty cool. And we also have all the booklets that you're going to be on the booklet subscription list as well. Those are incredible. Less than 10 minutes, and you can read the content of one of those booklets. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. And we're looking for, let's see, 3 more of you to call right now at that number with your very best gift. 800-347-5151. 5151.
And again, it's a matching gift, and we have been very blessed to have some people say, look, I want to encourage you to give. So that means a dollar for dollar match. So you give $10 becomes $20, $100 becomes $200. But they also are pretty rigorous, I know, about the fact that they at the end want to make sure that we made the match. So help us make the match. And certainly today is the day to do so. Jim Denison with us for a few more minutes. And of course, you mentioned just in passing the fact that in addition to your daily article on the Israeli election, you talked about Duke University barring young life. And before we get into that, you mentioned some of the positives. And I have a commentary coming out, no surprise on that I point out that some of this might be what I call religious liberty dominoes. You know, if you push that one domino, it pushes the next, the next, the next. Let's go back a year ago when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of a man by the name of Jack Phillips, the baker, the owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop. Now, there were some people, Jim, as you well know, that were upset that it was sort of a narrow ruling and didn't address the larger issue. But the other judges got the message, and that is last month, U.S. Court of Appeals actually ruled in favor of 2 Christian videographers in Minnesota. They produce commercials and live events and videos, but they declined to produce a wedding video, but the court ruled in their favor, just as the court ruled in favor of Jack Phillips. Then you mentioned yesterday the U.S. Court of Appeals, I guess it's the Arizona Supreme Court in this particular case, ruled in favor of these 2 Christian calligraphers. And so we have good examples of where, because of the Supreme Court precedents, and then the fact that we now have 150 judges that have been confirmed, 105 in the federal courts, 43 in the circuit courts, 2 Supreme Courts that have been confirmed under Donald Trump, and more to come, that a lot of things are going in the positive direction, aren't they?
And for that, we can be so grateful. I'm grateful not only for justices who are defending religious liberty, I'm also grateful for Christian attorneys who are making it their ministry to defend religious liberty as well. There are a number of groups, I know you know Kelly Shackelford and his group, there are others as well, that are really on the front lines, that are really taking on the, really in many ways, the assault on religious liberty that we're seeing in our lifetime. It's unprecedented in American history. To even have a concern as to whether an individual can be made to violate their religious beliefs in order to perform some particular act of service. Would we ever consider that we would make a Muslim bake a cake that defames Muhammad? Or would we ask a Jewish baker to bake a cake that would have a swastika on it or would elevate Hitler? And yet when it comes to Christians expressing their values, there's this idea that if they're in the public sphere, they have to leave their values at home. Well, that has not at all ever been the biblical concept, and certainly not even the American concept. Separation of church and state is not separation of faith and state.
Yes.
And from the founders to today, that's been a principle
really
we're really trying to
Very
promote.
good.
Say that again, would you?
Yeah, for years we've been familiar with the separation of church and state that Thomas Jefferson articulated in 1801, and his correspondence with a Baptist group in Connecticut, where he considered this wall of separation between church and state. So that's where the metaphor comes from.
Okay.
It's not in the Constitution, not in the Bill of Rights, not in the Declaration of Independence, a separation of church and state. But what he never meant, what even Thomas Jefferson never meant, was a separation of faith and state. He was himself, however deistic he might or might not have been, himself was very engaged, even as president, in promoting various faith positions and faith groups. He gave personally to faith groups out of his own finances. So he certainly did not believe that faith and state should be kept separate.
Let's talk about what's at stake, because you know as well as I do that you have some of these Democratic candidates that are saying, you know, this idea of religious liberty, this is just an excuse for bigotry. There are some that say, we'll still let you have freedom of worship, but not freedom of religion. And I want you to address that issue. And then you have some that are even right there right now saying, the Bible says a lot about poverty. It doesn't say a thing about abortion. So as a result, we really don't have to listen to these religious right types of people. And so you are well aware of the fact that what's at stake is if we have a change of administration, it could be very dark very quickly, couldn't it?
That's really what we want to be watching. There's some key phrases, and you've already described them, Kerby. One of them is separation of state relative to freedom of worship versus freedom of religion. The argument is that our freedom of religion that's enshrined in the Constitution is really only intended to apply to the act of worship itself, so that I, as a pastor, am protected relative to my free speech in the act of a sermon on a Sunday morning in the context of a worship service. But if I'm saying something on the air with you now, if I'm speaking at a men's Bible study on a Thursday, if I'm speaking to a prayer group on Wednesday, my speech is not protected. Now, what really is behind that is the idea, if freedom of religion is really only freedom of worship, then the tax provisions that are made available, 501c3 provisions, not for profit, would only apply to the parts of the church's possessions or property that are related to worship. And so a church could be tax exempt for its sanctuary, but not its school, not its gymnasium, not its offices. You could see trillions of dollars in kind of low-hanging fruit relative to what could be brought in through taxation of the part of the church building that isn't used expressly and only for worship. And I'm afraid that's driving a lot of this. But watch for that in these coming months, the people describing separation of worship or freedom of worship rather than freedom of religion.
And the other part of that is that, again, there's just a real animosity right now. And would we be in the position we are right now with the various successes you talk about in the daily article if we had a different president in office? And Brad and I have been talking about maybe we need to put together kind of a war chest for campaign and election 2020, because I just think there's a need for electing the right individuals from president all the way down to the state legislature. But it requires the education of a lot of individuals, because we have a whole generation of young people that believe that socialism is better than capitalism. What would you say about that?
It's frightening to see the percentages, 30 or 40% that say they're really interested in socialistic ideas. The first thing I'd have them do is go with me the next time I go to Cuba. I've been to Cuba 10 times. If they want to see socialism at work, they should come down and watch either 1950s worn-out American cars or 1980 Russian imports. They should see people that are so struggling to get by, that really struggle on even $30 a month, which is a typical income in Cuba. That's socialism. Or they should go to Venezuela and see socialism at work there. They should even go to Denmark, where socialism is touted to be working. But if you ask the people in Denmark, they're much more interested in capitalistic ideas and are trying to move in directions like that. A good friend of mine moved from Canada to the United States in part because he so hated the socialistic medical system that was there. Right. And he had friends that if they needed something significant done on a medical level would come to the States, because the single-payer socialistic kind of wait in line kind of medical care that was available to him wasn't what he and his family were needing. So if we could get people to understand what socialism really is, I think we'd understand how unattractive that is to our future.
Would it be true to say that it's never worked anywhere, that it's been tried, really? Would that be a safe thing to say?
Absolutely would say that. One point I'd bring to that point very quickly. People will look at the book of Acts in Acts chapter 2, where they put things together. They had all things in common, and they therefore met the needs of each other. And they will say, well, that's socialism at work. That is not socialism at work. Socialism is the government equaling, the government taking from the rich to give to the poor. Socialism is deciding that society comes first. That's why it's called socialism. What you had in Acts chapter 2 is an expression of Jewish benevolence, where they had these two offerings taken, one on Tuesday, one on Friday, called the tupah and the kapah, which were given to widows and orphans and people in need, so as to be able to meet the needs of those that were coming out of Judaism into Christianity and now needed that social network behind them. So Acts chapter 2 is not socialism. I don't know of any time that socialism has ever effectively worked in American or in human history.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
But you said it a lot better.
Yeah. We need to keep him here for just a little bit longer, but we need to go to one of those mandatory breaks, right? So let's do so.
So here's what we're going to do. I got something really cool to tell you. If 20 people right now call in with the gift of $50 a month or more, the entire $12,000 match will be cleared up.
There you go.
Just 20 people calling at a $50 or more level. Now, the match will apply to any gift of any size, single or monthly gift. We just simply need you to call 800-347-5151. Come on, guys. We only do this 2 weeks out of the whole year. 800 347-5151. You can also give at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
Jim Denison with us. We'll keep him over for just another couple of minutes. But again, pointofview.net to find out more about him. And we'll be back right after this.
Point of View, Truth Team. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind.
Back once again, we kept Jim Denison over for just another minute or two. He's a busy individual. I've already heard of 3 other things he's doing after this
That's right.
in the next 2 hours. So if nothing else, Jim, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk one more time to our listeners about why they need to support Point of View.
I would really make 3 points very quickly, if I could, Kerby. Thank you for the privilege of doing that. Over the years that I've been involved in ministry as a pastor, as a seminary professor, and now in what we do, it was at one point difficult for me to ask people to support a ministry financially. I kind of had this idea that I was asking something from them, that it was in some sense a favor they're doing for me or whatnot. Over the years, I've come to understand, if you find something God's in, then giving them an opportunity to invest in that is a privilege. Giving somebody a chance to join God at work, to give a gift that is going to be used literally to change lives and souls and to literally make a difference all around the world is a privilege. I want to be part of something like that. I want my life to count. I want to leave a legacy. I want to do something that matters. Point of View matters. Every day it matters. You're speaking the truth in love. You're speaking God's word, and it never returns void. And our listeners have an opportunity to invest in eternal difference if they'll do this. A second point I would make, as people invest in this ministry, they're investing not only in their finances, but it's also going to move their hearts, I believe, to a place where they'll be even more involved in the ministry and therefore more equipped in their own personal lives.
Right.
They'll be, as they're learning from you, they're able to use their influence in a way that makes a difference. They're able to stand up for Jesus and speak truth and love in ways that they're equipped to do because of their partnership with you. And then my last point would be this. As people give financially, the Holy Spirit often works in their hearts to have them give as intercessors as well, to start praying on a new level.
Yeah.
And as they pray, that's, of course, what we most of all need is people to pray for us and to pray with us. Charles Spurgeon, there's a terrific story when he was pastor of Metropolitan Tabernacle, the huge church in London. Some people from America came over and he showed them around. He showed them the sanctuary and the offices and all of the buildings and the 43 ministries. Then he insisted on showing them his boiler room. They didn't want to see the boiler room. They weren't interested in all the boiler room, but Charles Spurgeon insisted they go with him. So he brought them down to the basement where 100 people were on their faces in prayer.
Wow.
He said, that's my boiler room. Well, the more people give financially, the more they give from their hearts, and they get in that boiler room, and then the Holy Spirit moves with the kind of spiritual awakening we so desperately need in our day.
Well, again, I know you're a busy man, and it means a lot that you came in here, and thank you for letting us keep you here for another minute. So let's just
honored to be
out.
with you both. God bless.
Thank you. God bless.
So again, we'll let him go, but Brad, we still have a match on the table, and there are three very good reasons to give, because number one, you're investing in God's work. Number two, it will really cause you to be more involved, and number three, it will cause you to pray. So we appreciate your prayers, but we're also coming to you right now with a $12,000 match on the table so that you can participate in that, and I would encourage all of you to pray. Certainly, this is a great challenge, and we're facing a great challenge here in the 21st century.
We have a few people early on that checked in with us. We're not caught up with the paperwork, but we have some. Russellville, Arkansas, thanks for that gift. Fairbanks, Alaska with a gift. And we have El Paso, that would be Texas, I expect. Thank you very much. There's no state written down there, that's why. And we thank you for another gift there. And also one checking in from Jackson, California. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Somewhere there.
So, somewhere along those lines.
Somewhere along those lines. But here's what's important.
Yes.
What about you and you? You know, Kerby says this often as I do, and that is we're looking for full participation. A gift of any amount will be doubled right now up to $12,000. I happen to believe there are 20 people who could join at the $50 a month level, get the booklets, get the thank you gift of the Yeti tumbler, and we would have the match cared for. Can we do that in the next 8 minutes? We have the phone lines available. We're simply asking you to pray and obey. Do what God would have you do and be as generous as you can. 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. You can also check in with us on the web at pointofview.net. And especially new donors who have never given before.
That's right.
Man, the welcome mat is out for you as well.
And let me just mention, those of you watching online, I'll hold up the tumbler, which again keeps your drink either hot or cold for hours. And of course, one of the booklets here, the one on the Constitution. But if you say, well, I'm not on the computer right now, when you go on your computer later on, you can go to the website, pointofview.net, click on that button that says join the team. You can find out at various levels, the $50 a month level, $100 a month level, what you can do. But at any level, if you want to give on a monthly basis for any amount, it could be $20 a month or $30 a month, whatever you want to do, you will obviously receive the Outlook magazine, but so many other things you will receive as well. So it could be a single gift. I know some of you might say, look, I can give you $100 right now. Well, okay, we'll certainly want to use that towards our match because 100 becomes 200. But I also recognize that they have run into a few people, as I've had a chance over these last few years here, Brad, to travel around. Some people say, you know, I really could probably come up with $100 a month and $1,200 a year.
People have done that
Those
this
are some things. So let's, if we can, just real quickly hear from some of the individuals that have invested in this ministry in the past.
Point of View Truth Team.
And I've been listening to Point of View for about 12 years now. It's just been such an impact on me because in high school, when I first became aware of the political spectrum and all that, and then the culture wars going on, you know, I was a conservative ideologue, basically, you know, going with whatever conservatives said. But after listening to the show over the years, I've realized that I'm supposed to be for truth. I'm supposed to be a Christian and then a conservative. And I'm supposed to look at all this that's going on around us in today's culture through a biblical lens. And I can't thank y'all enough for that.
I'm so glad to have the Kingdom Keys Network that presents Point of View program and replays it by recording at night so I can catch up on what I miss. It is the highlight of my day. I don't have Wi-Fi or cable news access, so radio is almost my sole means of reception of news. And Point of View helps me understand the political landscape and apply Christian values to it. I'm so honored to be able to give to Point of View. It is a most worthy Christian outreach. We need their informed voice to speak to the issues we face each day.
Without programs like Point of View, Ministries and Works would not have a forum that reaches the populations that need to hear the truth about the very important issues that America is founded on. So often we take what we hear for granted, the radio program or the wonderful personalities, but you know, they can only be on if people like you and me support them.
Point of View Truth Team.
So again, I think some of our listeners who are now donors gave us some very good reasons why to support this ministry. Number one, we provide a forum for people like Jim Denison. In a few minutes, we'll hear from Wes Modder. And these are individuals that you learn about maybe sometimes for the first time. Number two, give you the resources so that you can be a person of influence in your sphere.
That's right.
So they're just some real good reasons for you to support this ministry. And as you said just a minute ago, new donors.
Yep.
I've met a number of people that have been listening for years and have not donated. I've also run in recently, Brad, to some people that have just started hearing in maybe the first time the station's in that market, or the station's been there for years, but it's the first time they've listened. So we're challenging some of you that have never supported Point of View to give a gift of any size, and we'll leave that to you to decide what that might be.
And again, that number is 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. We've got 5 lines open right now for you. You know, there's a couple more aspects here. We need to honor that person who gave that match challenge, because the way to honor that is
Good
to
point.
give.
Yes.
The way to honor that is get that money released. We don't get that money, that $12,000 in our total, until it's matched. It stays outside our total. So it is critical that we hear from you now during this match challenge at 800-347-5151. And perhaps you might have $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and you've been wondering where the Lord would have you put that. Maybe it's an inheritance, maybe some kind of a windfall that you didn't expect. And we would invite you. Some people have done that in the past and given at those levels, and it'll all be matched dollar for dollar up to the $12,000 match. 800-347-5151. Come on now, 800-347-5151. Let's get this match cleared up.
And again, pointofview.net. Every dollar doubled. We'll be back right after this.
When I turn on the news, there are days I wonder what's happened to our nation. So many things seem to be turned on their head. It makes you wonder, what can be done about it? Then I remember how Jesus talked about the power of truth and how it can set people free. We know the truth, and when it's spoken in love, it has the power to bring healing to our divided world. 2 Timothy reminds us that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Is it possible in our day and age to once again see civil debate, common sense, and national unity? It seems very clear from 2 Timothy that we are to be bold, not fearful, to appreciate God's power to do good, and to demonstrate to the world His truth and love. But to communicate this to a broken world, they need you to join our team. Join the Truth Team. Your monthly support has the power to turn our nation back to real truth. Join the Truth Team today at pointofview.net/team or by calling 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net/team or 1-800-347-5151.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
If you'd like to join with us, we certainly want to hear from you. 800-347-5151 is the pledge line. It is Truth Team, and in just a few minutes we're going to be talking with Wes Modder. You might say, well, who is he? Well, actually, now he's the founding pastor and lead pastor at Chicago Rock Church, but you may remember him from a couple of years ago, who found himself as a chaplain who just merely shared a biblical view about marriage and was going to be drummed out of the Navy. As a chaplain, you would expect chaplains to give the biblical point of view.
Well,
and
yeah.
So that would be one of those.
No
so
doubt.
It shows that kind of issue. So we'll talk about that in terms of religious liberty, talk about that in terms of what's happened in the military. And, of course, he's a pastor, so he'll be talking about the need to educate individuals. So those are all topics to address. But we're in the midst of a challenge, and that is a matching fund that is on the table. And I might just encourage you to decide to give right now, because there is an urgency. One, we, of course, want to meet the match. But two, I want you to begin to think about the fact, as we've said before, that if you see a mountain road, it's better to put a guardrail at the top than an emergency room at the bottom.
I like that.
And there is a sense in which you don't want to wait till all of a sudden this nation has turned a corner in the wrong direction. And we're talking about some things that are turning in the wrong direction in terms of the popular culture. I'm going to give you some examples of that in just a minute. I already, in the first hour, gave you some examples about this sort of alternative history that is being promoted not only in the public schools of America, but even from the platform for the presidential debates. And so we're going to be talking about that. And, of course, then we have an election. So this is why we encourage you to help us help you, to encourage you, educate you to make a difference in your community. And we've already given you a little bit of an understanding of what happens if we don't.
That's right.
Brad Fisk is with us. And, Brad, kind of where are we in terms of our match and in terms of some of our support?
Well, I'm very excited to let you know that we have gone below the $10,000 mark, remaining $9,894 left to go. That's the great news. We have that money available for match for you to give. But here's the news that's pressure, a little urgency here. We have to have this done by the top of the hour or it goes off the table. So we cannot let that happen. We really need to hear from you so that the entire $9,800 goes into our total. It goes in as you give. Your gift is matched by this fund, dollar for dollar. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. 5151.
Need to take care of all of that in less than 50 minutes.
That's
I've
correct.
been doing the math here, so that's where we are. And again, some people say, well, what do you think might happen? Well, let's look at where we are right now. A lot of our listeners have been, over the last couple of weeks, heard us sometimes talk about the Drag Queen Story Hour. And we even had Matt Staver with us, who was defending a pastor who actually wanted to try, if he could, to simply ask some questions. He wanted to actually attend the event so that if he spoke on the event, he wouldn't necessarily be saying something that was inaccurate. Now, for those of you that are watching online, you can see what happens when you do. This is the actual door to the pastor's office, and you can attest to me, for those that aren't looking online, it has one of those pentagrams and the word Satan that is spray painted on the door of the pastor's study.
That is so sad.
This is not a person that's a mean-spirited individual.
Right.
This is a person that simply says, look, I wanted to attend. I'll just sit in the back of the room, but find out what is being said to these kids at this drag queen story hour. These are men that dress up as women in some of the most garish costumes, and I'm being generous to put it mildly. You start thinking about putting your grandchildren, Brad, in front of that.
Yeah.
And then, because he wants to investigate that and maybe eventually speak out on that, he is, first of all, in one case, one was arrested. This is a different one, I believe. But nevertheless, here we find an individual that finds graffiti on the door to his church.
And, of course, you're never going to hear about this in the main press, ever. They are never going to talk about this stuff. That's another reason why you listen to Point of View and get information here that you're not going to get anywhere else.
So again, that's why we challenge you to consider what you might do to support this ministry. And we have talked about the fact that we do have a number of gifts we like to put in your hands. I know you don't give to get, but we do provide that. And so as you go to the website, you're going to see a couple of issues that are provided. First of all, for your monthly gift, you'll receive, of course, the monthly magazine, which is Outlook. At the Liberty Club level, we've already mentioned, of course, these tumblers that are available and the booklets that come out every single month. And then at the top level, the Century Club level, for $100 or month or more, we also send you, in addition to that, the Bible, the Life Essentials Interactive Study Bible, and you can find out more about how that is used. It's a great resource. It's all available, and it's our way of saying thank you for your support.
And that's what Teresa did. She gave a $50 monthly gift just a few moments ago. She's getting the Outlook magazine. She's getting the booklets and the 20-ounce Yeti. That's a Yeti brand tumbler, which is top of the line, heavy duty, built like a tank, actually. And that's going to happen for Teresa with her gift, just as a thank you gift. So the number, if you want to get in on this, and I hope you do, and every dollar be matched as you give, and whether it's a single gift or a monthly gift of any amount, 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. And you can give at pointofview.net as well.
One other thing I might just mention before we take a break here is that my commentary today, my Viewpoints commentary, is on campaign promises. And sometimes people say, well, in addition to the 3-hour program, what else am I supporting? Well, you're supporting the videos that we have available. We have one there right now, which I think is a great antidote to and response to the idea of socialism. But my commentary today is on campaign promises. And I point out, and you can even see a picture of a pie crust because I point out that phrase that says campaign promises are like pie crust, they're made to be broken. Turned out I researched that was first said back in the 17th century, which tells you a little bit about the fact. Now, back then it was just promises. Yeah. But the point is that people have always been skeptical about campaign promises. And, Brad, we get a lot of people making promises right now. And, first of all, I don't believe that they're going to be fulfilled. But more importantly, I think it just illustrates again that if some of them are fulfilled, it's going to be a very different world for you and your kids and your grandkids. And so just one more reason to support Point of View is so we can give you some talking points, some arguments, some material. And there you can actually sign up to get the Viewpoints commentary. I find people all the time putting them on their Facebook page, on their Twitter point. And what we're trying to do is equip you to have a sphere of influence, which you already have, and make a difference in your sphere of influence.
And let's not wait until it's an emergency, as you said.
That's right.
Let's not do that. Let's set the groundwork now to take care of it. And 800-347-5151. We have 2 lines open for you right now. 800-347-5151. Remember, we have until the top of the hour to get this $10,000 remaining match money matched. 800-347-5151. You can give online at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
And again, we've had a chance already to hear from our good friend Jim Denison. In just a minute, we're going to hear from Wes Modder. And for some of you, you might say, well, I don't know who he is. But some of you that are older timers, have been around for 4 years, remember what happened then and another victory, which we can talk about. So again, if you want to see more of those victories, 800-347-5151. Every dollar doubled.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
No doubt you've heard the phrase, campaign promises are like pie crust. They are made to be broken. The first time something like that was uttered was back in the 17th century. That shows you how skeptical people have been when a candidate makes a promise. The Democratic presidential candidates are making some extreme promises. Jim Garrity put together a short list from candidates he refers to as charlatans. Bernie Sanders promises no one will ever have to pay for public colleges or universities ever again. Elizabeth Warren promises that no American parents will pay more than 7% of their income on child care. Kamala Harris promises the average teacher will receive a $13,000 per year raise. Peter Buttigieg will cut the number of incarcerated Americans by half without an increase in crime. Andrew Yang promises that every adult citizen will receive $1,000 per month from the government forever. And don't forget Joe Biden, who promises the government will cure cancer once he is elected. Certainly, these candidates must know they can't deliver on these promises. There's the obvious question of cost. At a time when the federal government is $22 trillion in debt, where do they think they're going to get the money to pay for all these outrageous promises? But a more important question is, where do these candidates get the confidence that the government could even deliver on some of these promises? All you need to do is look at the last few presidential administrations that have had scandals and ineffective responses to everything from terrorist attacks to the Great Recession. We have so-called shovel-ready projects that turned out not to be so shovel-ready. We have veterans waiting for care because of the incompetence of the VA. The Affordable Care Act certainly hasn't made health care more affordable. These candidates are making promises they can't keep, and I suspect the voters know that. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Anti-Semitism, go to viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism. Viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism.
Point of View, Truth Team. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind.
Back once again as we are in the midst of Truth Team. Brad Fisk with me, and in just a minute we're going to be talking with former chaplain Wes Modder, Dr. Wes Modder, now of course founding and lead pastor at Chicago Rock Church, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But again, focusing our time and attention today on individuals that have been able to make a difference, and at the same time talking about some of the success stories that we've had. And Brad, how are we doing on our match at the moment?
Well, thank you for calling, and we have shaved off another $1,000 of that match. So we started at $12,000 last hour. We're down to $8,594. We have to get that match, though, because whatever's remaining goes away at the end of the hour. So we have 40 minutes approximately to have $8,594. It'd be a great opportunity for some Century Club people to join at $100 a month. We would love to see you check in with us and support Point of View. We are listener supported, totally dependent on you, the listener, for our finances. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. You can give online at pointofview.net as well.
And again, many of you that have been listening to this program for many years maybe remember a few years back when we've had, of course, almost every Friday, we have Kelly Shackelford sitting in your chair there of First Liberty. Yesterday, we had Jeremy Dice of First Liberty with us. And, of course, we've had Michael Berry. And they have focused on a number of religious liberty issues. And one of those involved a number of years ago a man by the name of Wes Modder, who was a chaplain at that time. First of all, he had served in the Marine Corps for many years and then was commissioned as a United United States Navy chaplain. Back, I believe it was in 1999. Here's an individual of exemplary service. I remember reading about people saying that he had sound judgment. We have appropriate confidence and diplomacy to speak to the entire chain of command. Very well loved and appreciated. And then he shared his biblical view in, I believe it was a private counseling session. And then everything came crashing down upon him. Yeah. Well, the good news is, if nothing else, we now want to tell you the rest of the story. And Dr. Wes Modder is the founder and lead pastor of Chicago Rock Church. So, Wes Modder, thank you so very much for being with us today here on Point of View.
Hey, it's great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us that story a little bit, because I wanted people to, first of all, celebrate the victory, which happened years ago, but also then kind of find out the rest of the story, because now you're up there in Chicago as a pastor.
That's right. So the victory happened, and we believed that the Lord was moving us, away from the Navy. So I spent my last year in San Diego, and we had been praying about the next step. And for me, just feeling the call of God upon our lives, we didn't put any agenda before the Lord, we have to move to Hawaii or Key West. Said, Lord, just wherever you want us to go, we follow. So Dr. Youngie Cho said, I pray and then I obey. So my orders weren't coming necessarily from Millington, Tennessee. They were coming from the Lord. So we believe God called us to the Chicagoland area and took a church in Chicago.
Let's, if we can, just for just a minute, come back to your military service, because just the other day we had ministry on here talking about the need to reach out to those people in the military that came out and they have PTSD or they have various problems or issues. As an individual that has been in the military, has been a chaplain, can you speak to that? Because that's certainly one of the aspects that you bring to the table, just a real understanding of what it's like to serve in the military. And we, on Point of View, always want to honor those people that have served us. We'll never be able to thank them enough. But talk about just the importance of what is happening in the military and the need for us now to help them integrate back into civilian life.
It's a great question. I was diagnosed with PTSD my last year in the Navy, and how you live with that is important. The first thing I would say is, it is a sacrifice to serve. A lot of us in the military, veterans, we don't do it really to make a name for ourselves. There is a cost that comes with serving. And chaplains are not immune from that cost. And neither are believers. It doesn't, non-believers. Everyone can be affected by military service. And although no one goes in to get PTSD or has to deal with the side effects of serving, they're very real. And to get the help that you need is imperative. And I think, there's a stigma with getting help, because everybody wants to get promoted and no one wants to be weak or even perceived to be weak. So the first thing I did is I had a colleague say, hey, you need to get help. And so I did. I went and I got the help that I needed. And I think that's the first step, is to admit that, you're a human and that, suicide is very real, where people feel an incredible despair. And, veterans integrating back into the civilian world, it's not because we necessarily feel that we're better, but what happens a lot is, when you're serving in the military requires leadership. It requires you to grow and to develop, and really finding a place for your civilian transition can be very daunting and difficult. And, I have just completed my first tour as a civilian. I have been out now 3 years, and I can say it's not been easy. There's a huge adjustment to that, and you can't do it alone. And you have to I think one of my favorite quotes is not a Bible verse. One of my favorite quotes is a guy by the name of William Tuffler. And he said the illiterate of the future will not be those who can't read and write, but those who are unwilling to learn, relearn, and unlearn.
Good line.
And I think that, that transition, you have to be willing to unlearn, relearn, and learn. And that can be very difficult. But there are services for the veteran on the outside. I happen to be in a state, that although I don't agree necessarily politically with what's happening in Illinois, they do take care of veterans, which was a pleasant surprise. And each state's different. But, I think the general consensus in America is, people always say, thank you for your service. I'm always hearing that, and which I'm grateful. I'm grateful to hear that. But it is very difficult to transition out into a new setting because the military culture changes you.
Yes,
it's
very
not
much
just
so.
It's a different world, and so we do the best we can. And the church, the local church, can be very strategic in how they help veterans.
Sure. And I want to talk about that. I need to come to one of those breaks, but I want to talk about that. Now, I just mentioned that your church is in Orland Hills, Illinois. It's in the Chicago area.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come back from the break, I want to talk about what the church can do, because now you wear a different hat. And we have a lot of people that are in churches. We have pastors and others wanting to know what to do. And so if you want to know a little bit more about now Pastor Dr. Wes Modder, he is at the Rock Church in Chicago, but we need to take a break. And just before we do so, Brad, let's talk about, again, the need for our listeners, if they appreciate those in the military, if they appreciate those in the church, what can they do to support this ministry so they can hear more about how they can make a difference in their community?
I have a simple answer to that is, do you like to double your money? If you had a guarantee that the money you gave to Point of View was doubled, guess what? I can give you that right now because a friend of the ministry has made some match challenge money available with a condition. There's $8,594 left of this match, and it has to be done by the top of the hour. So I don't know about you. I don't like leaving money on the table. I certainly wouldn't do that if I had a choice. So we're asking our friends to call right now. This is a critical time to be a part of what we're doing. 1-800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. Think of paying it forward. Think of paying it to the next generation. Go ahead, look your child in the eyes and in the face. Hold your hands on either side of them and just look at those eyes. Do the same thing with those grandbabies. Regardless of how old they are, give them a hug. Give them a squeeze. Look them in the eye. What kind of a world are we going to leave them? We get to help determine that right here and right now. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. We have 5 lines open right now for you. 5 lines. Let's get it done right now.
Let's also hear from those of you maybe in the military, since that's certainly one of the themes with former chaplain Wes Modder. Also want to hear from some of you that appreciate First Liberty, religious liberty,
yes,
and those kinds of issues. Certainly we need to hear from you as well. 800-347-5151.
Come on, let's go.
Every dollar doubled.
Yep.
We'll be back right after this.
Let's go.
This week, we're celebrating the power of one. The power each one of us has to help change our world. The power to carry the love of Christ and His truth to a hurting world. The power to restore hearts and minds across the nation. Throughout the week, you'll hear from ordinary people just like you. You'll hear them tell about what they've done, how they've gotten involved, how they've helped to restore truth in our culture. You have the power to change lives. You have the power to carry truth to every corner of our nation. And with the help of a special ministry friend, that power is going to be doubled. Join the Truth Team today and boldly stand for truth in a world of lies, distortion, and information manipulation. If you join today with a monthly gift, each gift you give will be matched dollar for dollar for an entire year. Give online by going to pointofview.net and click on the Truth Team banner, or call us at 1-800-347-5151. We're standing by to take your call now, so call 1-800-347-5151 or go online to pointofview.net and join the team.
Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour. That means that we only have about a half an hour left before we actually finish off the match for the day. And again, this is part of Truth Team, if you just joined us. And we're talking with Dr. Wes Modder, who's also the pastor at Chicago Rock Church. Before we get back to some conversation with him, let me come real quickly to Brad Fisk, because I just want to kind of know where we are and what we need to do in these next about 20-some-odd minutes.
Well, we started with a match challenge a while ago, and we have made wonderful progress. Let's praise the Lord, and we have $5,084 to go. If we had some clapping sound effects, I'd be playing them right now. So we're very thrilled. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So many people are joining the Truth Team at that $50 a month level or more. And so here's what's going on. Twice a year, we have this thing we call Truth Team Week. Yep. And it's a time for us to come to you and tell you something we don't mention often enough, because a lot of people are surprised. We are listener-supported Christian radio with a Christian-oriented, biblically-oriented program, and we're on every single day for you. A tremendous amount of work goes into every broadcast, and we want to say thank you to Kerby Anderson, because you have been doing a phenomenal job for decades now on this radio program. But you know what? A whole bunch of people have given before to get us here today. So we're here, bills are paid, we're ready to go. But you know what? We're asking you to help us go to the future. It's so important. We'll talk more about that later in the hour. But it's so important for Point of View to be a strong source of biblical information. And that only happens when you support us, my friend. You're the hero. When you give, you're the hero helping us to continue what we do. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. I'm looking in the phone room. We move things around where I can see the whole thing now. And so what I'd like to see happen is if you go to your phones right now, this very minute before we put our guests back on, and dial this number, 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. Or go on the website at pointofview.net with your very best gift. Would you do that for us? Not for us. Do it for the glory of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Wes Modder with us, and of course he is the lead pastor and even founder of the Chicago Rock Church, which is in Illinois. Just a great opportunity for you to find out a little bit more. I understand that we'll even have a radio station soon in Chicago. Of course, I've worked over the years with a number of other Christian radio stations in Chicago, so you might want to visit them. But for just a few minutes, Wes Modder, let's talk about the role that you have now as pastor. We have a lot of listeners that are pastors, they're Sunday school teachers, Bible fellowship leaders, small group leaders. And, of course, most of our listeners probably attend a church. What's the role of the church in terms of outreach? Because now you have a different hat that you wear compared to the one as a chaplain. But some of the same needs that you addressed in the military still are needs that you have to address within your congregation, I would suspect.
Right. My whole viewpoint has changed from a local pastor. And, you know, one of the deep respects I have is for the local pastor, because I don't know that a lot of people understand, you know, what a pastor will go through. And obviously I've had my first indoctrination of it. I pastored before I came back in the Navy in my broken time, but my respect for the local pastor is exponentially higher. I also want to mention, you listed a whole team of people from First Liberty. And I just want to give a shout out to First Liberty. I would not be here today if they had not stepped in and been the defenders of freedom and religious liberty that they did. And I'm indebted to that law firm for the rest of my life. And what they're doing at First Liberty is incredible in the kingdom. And I just want to thank them and all those who supported me in my case. But I would say that the local pastor can be overlooked, and, you know, is a spiritual component to this. And I would say the boards across America, the local church, you need to pray for your pastor and lift him up and encourage him, because they are on the pointy end of the spear in the kingdom. And so that's what I would say. I mean, it's important to take care of the veteran that comes in, but I would be remiss to say, now having the 3 years I have been out and working with so many pastors in the Chicagoland area. You know, George Barna said in 2018 that 42% of the people in Chicago no longer attend church or they're de-churched. And so this is an incredible harvest field. And I would say this is ground zero with some of the things that are happening in America. So pray for us in the Chicagoland area, you know, because there are people still here in Chicago. There are people who still need to hear from the Lord. And I think the greatest thing we can do is reestablish the altar of our hearts and the altar of our churches. We can't do anything effectively unless we have established the altar of the Lord, where we're seeking him, praying to him, because he is the only way that we will be effective in kingdom ministry, whether it's in the military or the local pulpit in the local church. And if you have a chaplain attending your church, my goodness, get around that man, support him, pray for his family, love them for the time that they're in your church before they get orders, and partner with a local chaplain who can be very effective in serving our military bases across America.
Well, again, we've talked about this with Michael Berry's been on the program with us. Of course, every Friday, we usually have Kelly Shackelford. If he can't come, we'll have maybe Jeremy Dice or Lathan Watts or somebody of that nature there as well, because we so believe that this religious liberty issue is important, and even this issue of religious liberty in the military is important. And so I saw Kelly Shackelford today, Brad, and told him I was going to have Wes on. He said, "Oh, I'm just thrilled about that." And of course, we'll have a lot of these great stories. But as you also pointed out, we need to uphold and pray for our pastors. And just as I guess it was about 4 years ago, we encouraged our listeners to pray for you when you were going through such a difficult time. There are a lot of people that have never met you, probably never will meet you, but maybe met you today on radio to find out that there is the other side of that, and that is you're a pastor of Chicago Rock Church. And like you said, you're in ground zero. We certainly have other radio stations in the state of Illinois, as well as in 41 other states in addition to Illinois. So it's just great to hear from you. And I look forward to the next opportunity, because obviously you've got a real heart for those in the military. You've got a real heart for those in the pastorate and a heart for the congregation that you have. So I really appreciate you joining us today here on Point of View.
And I got to say this, we thank you for your service. I know you said earlier you enjoy hearing that. I wanted to say that. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. And I'm excited to say, you know, that I will be releasing, everyone's asked me to write a book. And so that's being developed and will be released within the next year, called Freedom to Stand. I look forward to, going on a book tour and getting that information out.
You have an invitation instantaneously right here on Point of View, and we'll expose you to about 260-odd radio stations all at once that carry the program. So thank you so very much for joining us.
My final statement, would be that religious liberty is not something just in the military. Religious liberty is who we are as Americans, and it's in the pulpits in the local church. So I didn't know there was a religious liberty fight. I didn't know it was an issue. But all your listeners, I want to continue to encourage you to pray for your local pastor, pray for the chaplains, and, just be willing to grow in the Lord in that way, because that's who we are as America. We're not perfect, but I tell you what, we have a big God, and there's a great message. It's a great message to share with the world, and people know when you love them and care for them. But I'm honored you'd have me, and thank you for the time that you've given me today.
Can't wait to read the book. Can't wait to get you on there. Make sure your publisher gets us an advance copy. We'll get you on as soon as we can and give it some publicity. So I want to say thank you. But just before I run out of time in this segment, Brad, we still have a match on the table. And it is a $12,000 match that's whittled down
$5,084.
There
but that's still our little mini mountain here.
Okay.
And guess what? This is good news. If 15 people were to call us right now at 800-347-5151 with a monthly gift of $50 or more, the entire match would be cared for. 8 more calls at that level, or you can do it other ways. We have other people who gave a $1,200 gift. You can do it any way you want. Any size gift, single or monthly, will be doubled dollar for dollar. Looking for those large gifts. 800-347-5151. Looking for the small gifts as well. Any size. That's up to you, not us. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
You know, I just said a minute ago, we'd like to hear from some of you in the military because Wes Modder was in the military.
Yes.
He was even a chaplain for the SEALs. Most people don't know he's also a SEAL chaplain before he was Navy chaplain. And then I'd want to hear from those of you that maybe have a ministry inside the church, maybe a pastor would like to join with us, and those of you that certainly appreciate the conversation about religious liberty. So all of you can participate by giving us a call right now at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, pointofview.net.
And remember, this money disappears at the top of the hour if it's not matched. Give us a call right now, please.
Every dollar doubled. We'll be right back.
Point of View Truth Team. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, and of love, and of a sound mind.
Hi, this is Michael Ferris. I am the President, CEO, and General Counsel of Alliance Defending Freedom, and I've been friends with Point of View Radio for decades. This is such a great radio ministry. I'm personally a partner with Point of View, and I would encourage each of you to be a partner. Point of View gets information in a timely fashion to people who need to know the truth, and Point of View brings you the truth. It brings you a Christian perspective on the news, and it calls you to prayer and action in a timely manner. I'll never forget the day that freedom was preserved in the homeschool arena because of the work of Point of View Radio, leading the charge on that. And so always been grateful for that and would encourage you to be a part of the Point of View team. God bless you.
Some great comments from our friend Michael Ferris. I've known him since the days he took over for teaching a Sunday school class I've been teaching in the Washington, D.C. area. Homeschool Legal Defense Association, Patrick Henry College, now the head of the Alliance Defending Freedom. We mentioned some of those religious liberty victories. As a matter of fact, the one that I mentioned that happened yesterday actually was an ADF case. And so those are some examples of individuals that have certainly benefited from Point of View. And Michael Ferris could just be saying, well, I'll just be praying for you. But no, I'm not just praying for you, but I'm one of your donors.
That's right.
And he actually supports this ministry. So I want to ask to some of our listeners, where are you? Because he has certainly had a lot of other ministries he could give to, but he gives to this one because he so appreciates what we do. That's why we need to hear from you right now.
You'll know us because of the friends we have that would do support us and take care of us. Hey, I want to say some quick comments before we go to something else here. Somebody says, keep doing what you're doing with big exclamation mark. There's another lady who basically wrote us a half a book of just she loves us. She absolutely listens every single day. She gave very generously as well. And thank you for that. And then another one says, I like your boldness.
Oh, thank you.
That's good. That's a good comment.
That is good. I'll take that.
So here's what's happening. We are on a deadline. We have $4,984 to go, and we will have the match challenge cleared up. The reason it's so important is because we are down to the final 9 minutes to get that done. Here's the phone number, 800-347-5151. We need all of it to be covered so we don't lose any of that money, so it doesn't go away at the end of the hour. $4,984. Perhaps you're there where you could do $1,000. Perhaps you could do the $1,200 and join the Century team. The amounts between you and the Lord. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151.
Point of View Truth Team.
Going through the stations and caught Kerby and a very interesting topic. So just listening to it, and so just by hearing the topic, I can relate to some of those topics. But it has impacted my life a lot. I enjoy listening to the station.
It has been about 25 years since God providentially led me to Point of View when I did not even know it existed. During this time, I have shared numerous taped programs with my family and incorporated the Outlook magazine and other articles into the homeschool curriculum I used in teaching our 5 children. Back 25 years ago, I had to put a big box radio with a recorder strategically in a corner so that I could hear that message. Point of View receives no government funding, for which I am grateful. It is therefore my honor, privilege, and responsibility to support this organization of tremendous self-sacrificing people on a monthly financial basis, and to put courage into them through letters and specific prayers, as they have become like family to me.
Point of View Truth Team.
So great comments, certainly.
Yeah.
Just appreciate those. And just a reminder that I think most people know we don't receive government funding, and National Public Radio does, and your tax dollars go towards that. But we don't receive government funding, nor do we want government funding. We want you to support this ministry. And in some respects, that gives us a lot of freedom, too. You know, we don't have various advertisers saying, well, I don't want you to talk about that issue, because, Brad, one of the things we say is every issue is on the table here at Point of View. So let me encourage you as we come to the very end. It's down to not even 10 minutes, about 5 minutes left.
But we've made a little progress.
But we have made a lot of progress.
$2,333, we're going through glass, communicating with each other here. It's exciting.
That's the way we used to do it.
There's room for you, though. There's lines open at 800-347-5151. We're trying to clear things up by the top of the hour, so we put the entire $12,000 along with your $12,000 into our total. That is so critical right now. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. You can also give at pointofview.net. It might not be possible to make a call right now. You can go online at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
Let me just mention that we started with $12,000. We're now about $2,000. And some people say, well, I think you're doing pretty well. Yeah, but just imagine if you had $12,000 on the table, and then somebody eventually still left $2,000 on the table, you'd still say, that's a lot of money still on the table. So,
for anybody's
yes,
book.
we feel like we've made a lot of progress, but we don't want to leave any of that on the table, and that's exactly why we're challenging you to be involved. Now it's 1,887. So, okay, it just dropped a little bit again a minute ago. So we can see it whittling away just as we go, but we're just down to about 2 minutes left. We will take some phone calls after we go off the air.
We will. Well, it counts through that as well.
Sure.
800-347-5151. I ask a very simple question. What is the program Point of View worth to you, to your family, to your church, to your school? I mean, just a few moments ago, we heard an endorsement for pastors, for church workers from our guest. And, you know, he was just championing the church. We do too. The church was God's idea, not our idea.
Mm-hmm.
We are simply advancing that along with family. That was God's idea too. A man and a woman and kids. That's the way the Bible lays it out. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. I see 2 lines open right now.
So, again, we'll get to those in a minute. Let me just mention, just while we have a break in the action, Mary DeMuth will be on tomorrow. Noel Boucher will be on tomorrow. Friday, of course, Gary Bauer will be joining with Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford, and others. So you've got a lot more to look forward to. And if nothing else, that's why we want to make sure we clear this one up so we have nothing remaining. And that's why we are calling for you to actually take a moment, grab that phone, call 800-347-5151. So many of you now have cell phones, you can not even call. Just go to pointofview.net, click on that little banner there. It says join the team and put in your amount. And that's a very simple way in which you can actually give us your pledge and know that we have met the match as we come to the last minute just before we say goodbye today. So if you've enjoyed some of the conversation with Jim Denison and with Wes Modder, we have that information on our website for you to read, to print out, and to encourage others in terms of your own personal ministry that you might have.
I want to say thank you to some ladies who gave just a few moments ago. Anita, Deborah, Suzanne, Rhonda, just a few of many that have called in. Thank you for your gift. Thank you for your sacrifice of dollars. It's so important. Again, as we go off the air, we can continue to take your calls because all the 3 lines are now open. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. We are close to $1,000 to go, and we'll have it done. 800-347-5151.
Again, it's a new total here, so we're getting even lower, but there's still room for you. 800-347-5151, or just join us at pointofview.net. Brad, I appreciate your help, and we'll see you back here tomorrow, right here on Point of View.
When I turn on the news, there are days I wonder what's happened to our nation. So many things seem to be turned on their head. It makes you wonder, what can be done about it? Then I remember how Jesus talked about the power of truth and how it can set people free. We know the truth, and when it's spoken in love, it has the power to bring healing to our divided world. 2 Timothy reminds us that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Is it possible in our day and age to once again see civil debate, common sense, and national unity? It seems very clear from 2 Timothy that we are to be bold, not fearful, to appreciate God's power to do good, and to demonstrate to the world His truth and love. But to communicate this to a broken world, they need you to join our team. Join the Truth Team. Your monthly support has the power to turn our nation back to real truth. Join the Truth Team today at pointofview.net/team or by calling 1-800-347-5151. That's pointofview.net/team or 1-800-347-5151.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.